Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
My name is Zain, as you just saw in the introduction, and I'll be your moderator for this book talk. I have with me Muhammad Ali Samejo, who is the author of this wonderful book right here, Legends of Karachi. So this is from the back of the book. Legends of Karachi. In 1729 AD, the city of Karachi was founded and named in honor of Mai Kolachi, whose son is said to have slain a man-eating crocodile in the village after his elder brothers had already been killed by it. Nearly 3 centuries later, the stories like the one above have become legend. Some may be true, while some will never see the light of day. But like Kalachi's son and the crocodile, it doesn't mean that these Perhaps a reporter stumbles on more than what she bargained for. Perhaps all of it happened for a fact. Karachi, the city of lights, and these are some of its stories. Ali, why
Hello.
this book? This is where I want to start off this conversation. I always speak to my students about this all the time. Whenever they're like, "Oh, I have a book I want to write, a project I'm working on," I was like, "Why you? Why are you the one writing this book?"
Well, because no one else is. And secondly, it was just a culmination of all the stories that had been, running in my mind ever since I can remember, ever since I figured what stories were. And I felt that these were some stories that maybe no one wanted to tell, or maybe, no one had ever thought of. For instance, I would just look at people and think, I bet this guy's got an interesting story. I bet he's got an interesting life. I bet she does amazing things. And I figured, why can't I just, make that make that materialize? So I figured, let's see how outlandish I can get with the stories. And I went ahead. I started off building my characters. I chiseled them out, and then I laid how their storylines would act out. Eventually, it went through a lot of trial and error. It took me, I guess, maybe few years before the final product, came up, and here we are. So I just felt that these stories were not something that we would see commonly, not just in literature, but on popular media as well. And that was my goal, to get these stories out there, to get it to resonate with the people who really needed to see it, who may be disillusioned with what they see in the media, what they read in books, and hence Legends of Karachi. And here we are now.
The core, where you found that kernel from which all these other stories came from.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I kind of cut back there.
Oh no, I just meant to say that was there one story from all of these stories that started off this massive project of yours?
Yeah, because like I said, it was based on characters. So I would say it started off from the very first character we see in the book, and that is the character of Nadir, a middle class, civic minded person who is got a very clear, well, mostly clear sense of what black and white should be. Hence the first chapter. He believes in order. He believes in following strict rules and regulations, but all around he sees nothing but chaos, which essentially what Karachi is. And he, on you know how it is. You're sitting in your car one day, and all of a sudden you see someone coming up the wrong way, and you're like, "Ooh, I'd like to give that guy a piece of my mind." And Nadir, on the other hand, likes to exercise that thought, and he gets to take practical steps. And not just Nadir, but he's got an entire gathering of people who are now getting together, and they're being civic minded citizens about the whole thing. So that is kind of where it started off from. You could say it was probably one of my it was my disgruntled self who was like, you know what, I really want to do something about this. And That's one story that's never been told, and here we are. So Legends of Karachi kind of stemmed off with that. And I'm like, why limit myself to one character? Why not just explore this entire city and for everyone that it has to offer? So I think I got as many as I could, but there are so many more. There's so many more.
I'm so glad you used that word chaos, because that is a word that we associate, all of us associate with Karachi, and also this book too, right? It's not your usual novel. It's not a usual collection of short stories. It is a very, very, in the best possible way, a very chaotic book. Characters come out of nowhere. Characters form relationships out of nowhere. Things are blowing up. People are dying. Some people are falling in love. Other people are dealing with just the daily struggles of everyday life. And one thing, there is a through line though throughout all of this, and that through line is that all of this is happening in Karachi. And Karachi is a very, I think, just like in our real lives, Karachi is a character. Karachi is plays a very, very pivotal role in our lives. I don't know of a time when the city itself didn't interfere with how my day was going, or the city
Yeah,
didn't influence what was happening. So were you kind of, did you have that in your mind when you were writing this? Like Karachi was really going to be the protagonist of all of these stories.
absolutely. People have asked me, just who's narrating this, right? And in the back of my mind, you know what? Who better to tell the tale of Karachi than Karachi itself? I probably didn't make it very overt, obvious, but yes, Karachi itself is, brimming with its own stories. You can tell that Karachi knows the people. It knows the psyche of these people. It's woven into its DNA. And Karachi has a DNA. It's had a DNA for ages. And we've seen it, growing up in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s even. Karachi has gone from, strength to strength. And I mean that in a good way, right? Because Karachi has seen awful stuff. I've lost pretty good people who were close to me for one reason or the other, and I also try to, emulate that, some of that in the book as well. A couple of incidents, like, a mugging gone wrong happened to a friend of mine. May he rest in peace. And I figured, what, why not just, write a story about that? But that is what Karachi does. It tests you, and then it tests you again, and it tests you again. I mean, it's like, it's never done with you. I think of Karachi as this very, very cruel mistress. You can't stop falling in love with her. And she's going to push you every day of the week, every hour of the day, in fact.
Why do we stick around then? Why are we so happy in this toxic relationship we've established with the city?
Oh boy, that's going to be a good one. If I could answer that, that would be incredible. I could probably solve the mystery for every single toxic relationship out there. But that's what Karachi is. Like I said, we're woven into its DNA, and vice versa. It's woven into ours. I've always thought of my life, what, if I retire, I'll probably just leave Karachi. At the same time, I don't think I ever could. None of us could. Karachi is, where I was born. Karachi is where I'll probably end up one way or the other. I'm going to stick around. And we just can't let go of that relationship because it brings out the best in us while at the same time keeping us from bringing out the worst in us. Yes, it does bring out the worst in people. Very sorry to say that. But, that's how people are tested. You're either made or you're broken. And I guess, for the people who are made out of it, it's like a trial by fire, or I don't know what other phrase to use for that, but that's what Karachi does to us. Every Karachiite, every person out there who's living in this amazing city, who goes out wherever they want to go, they're always going to have their heart stuck in Karachi, and they're going to be coming back to it. Doesn't matter what it does.
They're either going to have their heart stuck in there, or their ears will be ringing when they're outside of Karachi. Because I know that it's happened to myself and lots of people I know. When they leave Karachi, they're like, oh, it's too quiet, can't go to sleep, need to go back to Karachi and live close to Shah Faisal.
You've got to have that broken silencer. You've got to have those stray dogs barking at night. You can't sleep otherwise. And I have tried that. I went to a hill station once. It was quiet as death. And I had to turn the fan on in winter just to get myself a good night's sleep. And that's how it is, because you can't, it's in your DNA. You're in its DNA. Anyway, it's not like you can just leave. It's not going to let you go. Just like we said, Karachi is like that.
It doesn't let people go. It doesn't let people come in either. I know so many people have tried to move to Karachi and run away because, I mean, lets them come in, but it takes a while to get used to Karachi. In fact, it takes a certain kind of person to get used to Karachi. And those are the kinds of people that you have in your book right here. These aren't your run of the mill people who would not who would, I don't know, be who wouldn't be outcasts in other places, because that's what I think a lot of these people have at their heart. And I want to talk about the characters and the themes of the book in detail, but I was wondering if you could first kind of read us a little from the book, and introduce our people to your style of writing, and kind of just put us into the world of one of these stories, and then we'll take it from there.
Oh, the agony of choice. What do I read? Never
That
done
will
right
tell us a
reading.
lot.
Oh God. All right. Well, here we go. How do I put this? Ooh, this is a good one. All right, here we go. So I'm going to read from a chapter, Balance of Power. It's on page 60 if you want to have a look. And oh, okay, here we go. So we're talking about the state of public transport, and it's kind of just starting from there, and just gonna go over with how, you know, Karachi is no exception to the misery wrought on thoroughfares, perhaps even more so, since it has nothing closely resembling a mass transit system. The problems are further quadrupled thanks to the infinite number of 70cc motorcycles, the emerging number of three-wheel rickshaws, and the hazardous mini buses that should have been decommissioned decades ago. Most of these buses were manufactured by a motor company that was retired in the early 1990s. So their continued presence on the streets of Karachi speaks volume of the state of public transportation. It gets even worse whenever there is a VIP movement that showcases the amazing level of organization in the city's otherwise apathetic police and traffic police forces. VIP movements were created and perfected on the thoroughfares of Karachi after a former president's life was threatened by two assassination attempts on Sharai Faisal, a road that forms one of the most important and busiest arteries of Karachi. After these attempts, the president turned Sharai Faisal into an exclusive road for his sole movement, along with a cavalcade of security vehicles, ambulances, and decoys. This lasted for the entire time his entourage was to spend on the road, resulting in all connecting traffic to be blocked from entering Sharai Faisal for hours. Once, a young man trying to get to his university on the other side had found a way to get on the road. He was promptly shot dead by a security official with a twitchy trigger finger. And I guess
Wonderful.
that's
Yeah,
here
I
we
mean,
go.
this reads like something you would see on the news, something you would
Oh, yeah.
hear. This is something we've lived. This is something I
Yeah.
think someone who's lived in Pakistan, in Karachi, well, not in
I
Pakistan,
was
but very
I was
close to.
stuck in this. Yeah, I was stuck in the very same traffic jam that this happened. I was coming out of one of the institutes. You know, Shara Festival has institutes all over, before nursery and everywhere. And I was coming out of it with my brother, and I was stuck on the service road. And would you believe it? I had to go all the way back to where the train tracks are, where Mahmoodabad is. And I don't know, I almost got my car on one of the tracks. And I managed to get out somewhere, but I still couldn't get out to Sharai Festival. Anyway, but then when I got home, I turned on the news, and there was this breaking news: kid shot dead on the streets of Sharai Festival for breaking a barricade. And well, there it is.
This is beginning to feel like a therapeutic, cathartic session where both of us are just talking about how Karachi is just never, it never leaves. It's always there. It's always in our lives.
Always there.
Always
In
affecting
fact,
everything.
I hope you don't mind. I was actually going through your book blurb, right? For I forget the title. I'm so sorry. But I'm guessing, from the blurb, it's about what happened on 12th May, isn't it?
Oh, you're talking about the second book. Oh, The Year of
Yeah,
Sound and Heat. Yeah, that is the
yeah,
title of the
that's
book.
right. Yeah, yeah. So is that 12th May? I'm sorry, I'm just not
It's part
understood.
of it. So the book is actually the
Really?
whole year. It's called The Year of
Oh,
Sound and Heat. So it starts with January, and it kind of takes
uh,
you through the. That's where the whole thing with the judiciary and the general was happening, and then it led to the 12th of May, and then November, and then October, and then December. That year was a mess.
exactly,
2007 was a
exactly.
mess.
It was a mess, yeah. And I remember I was there on 12th May. I was right there, FTC building. It was right in front of me. And I don't know what I was doing there. Just turned tail and ran. The same thing happened when the emergency was imposed. I almost could not get on my flight on that day in November from Lahore. And but it's amazing. See, here it is. Just two people talking. And, I just need to mention the days. November 2007, 12th May 2007, and there we are. There are stories like this everywhere. Ask anyone. And once they tell you, man, that's just going to take off like anything.
So it seems to me like a lot, like myself, a lot of your research is lived experience. You've lived through most of what you're writing about. But other than the fact that some of these stories are to do with, maybe stories you've heard from other people, maybe stories for people close to you, stories that you yourself have experienced. What other research goes into writing a book as massive as this? And by massive, I don't mean in terms of page numbers. I mean in terms of the actual content that exists in this book.
Well, a lot of it, at least the outlandish elements, and there are, some outlandish elements in there, that's purely fiction. But as far as, researching into the character goes, these are all people that, I've met, that I've spoken to, who have wanted themselves to be, put up front, like doctors, like lawyers, like bankers, especially. The banker's story is actually very clever, but I couldn't go into too much detail about it. And all of these people had stories, and besides which, you keep talking to them, they'll tell you everything that they've experienced. They probably could write a book by themselves, but they probably wouldn't want to for one reason or the other. So I take it upon myself to see what exactly I could do with it. And the results were surprisingly very pleasant. Same is the case with people, the group of teenagers who decide to, foil street muggers outside Bambino Cinema. I guess that's where I wrote. And similarly, people who are medical professionals who have a conscience about, exercising something a little bit extrajudicial to save people. So all of it came with a certain understanding that the people found themselves very helpless to do what they could to help. They were kind of encased in a box. They wanted to get out of that box. Getting out of that box would have meant turning to violence. And that would have, tested them a little bit more, the whole make and break equation. Naturally, as people, people who are principled and morally guided, we're like, you know what, there are certain lines we can't cross. But what if those lines were to be crossed? And that was what my entire thinking behind Legends of Karachi was. What if the entire population of Karachi decided one fine day, what if I do things differently? What if I step out of line? What if I try changing things? That was actually one of the other equations behind the stories in Legends of Karachi. It was based on people who have seen circumstances, who have wanted to do something about them, and ultimately could not. Now, I'm not saying that, read Legends of Karachi and live out one of your most surrealist fantasies ever. I'm not saying, you should start incite a riot. I'm not saying that at all. But this is how it is, right? People do different things. And it kind of hit home with me once. There's a scene that I wrote, and I wrote this 3 years ago, about a death taking place in a super mall in a big mall in Tariq Road. And a couple of months after the book is released, I hear this news about a guy committing suicide from a food court. And I'm like, oh my God, can I write this? But the point is, people are driven. to taking steps like this every day. They'd probably just, imagine it and don't do it. Some people do, some people don't. And that is exactly what I kind of wanted to write here. Yes, we hear you. We know what you're thinking. And it's natural to think that. Now, I don't know if there's a moral argument to be made here, but I guess that's entirely up to the person who's doing it.
And I know the answer to this question, but I want us to talk about this a little, because this is where fiction takes center stage. Things like this, where you are setting out not just to tell stories as they are, but tell stories as they could be. Tell things as they could be, tell the world as it could be, talk about the city as it could be and the people of the city as it could be. And just kind of a brief interlude, you were talking about this experience you had with the mall, and or this kind of story you were writing about the mall in Tariq Road. Yesterday, there was a fire in Jail Jarangi, Jail Jarangi at Chase, right? A friend of mine.
I was there. I was there. Yeah, I just... Oh my God. Oh, yes.
We were probably in the same place around the same time. So a friend of mine lives in that building, and he actually didn't know about the fire. So he just left. He saw there was some smoke coming out, but he just left, came to university. I called him when he got here. I was like, what are you doing? Go back home. You need to get your stuff out, because they were evacuating the building. But anyway, so I went there to help him kind of evacuate, get his stuff out of the building. They weren't letting us go upstairs because it was barricaded, it was sealed. The Rangers were downstairs, but I got the most surreal feeling I've gotten in a very long time, because a very long time ago, and also it's in the book. That scene is also in the book that's coming out, The Year of Sound and Heat, the one we were just talking about. It was in that there's a scene in which people are just standing around a dead body, talking about how their day was. Just how their day has been, and eating peanuts and chatting about cricket, etc., etc. And that was something that I had written as fiction, as something I'd imagined. I was like, that's probably how it's like. But yesterday, when there's a building burning, there's smoke coming out, there's black smoke, and people couldn't breathe. It was very difficult. And you still had a massive crowd of people just standing there chatting. It was just normal chit chat. And that's where, when fiction, the kind of fiction that I imagined at that point, but I'm also sure that the kind of fiction you've imagined at some point will become nonfiction. It will become reality. It might become reality. And that is both for me the joy and the sheer terror of reading fiction, and reading fiction like this, because you never know when it's actually just going to happen at some point, and you will be there.
And that just hit me. That just hit me. And I could tell, this is kind of speechless now. But I would actually love to read that again. But then you're right. You're absolutely right. Like you said, what happened with the building and the fire. And so there's a story in here. The one, I don't know, I mentioned about it. The one about the guy getting shot during a mugging, and how it happens, how Karachi give it and Karachi take it away, how people are surrounding, even though they've got no first aid training and they're pretending to help. They're not. Talked about how emergency vehicle response times are, if at all, and how it happens. A guy's lying dead, a bullet oozing out of his head, and people are imagining, ooh, let's take his jacket off. Maybe that'll help him breathe. Maybe that'll help the guy with a big bullet hole in his head breathe. But this is how it is. People are strange in that situation. And it's incredible to think that, we could think, okay, maybe this is unreal. This is fiction. But it's turning out that way. And it's not just here in Pakistan. It's everywhere. Like, if you take a look at how people are comparing police states abroad, or people are comparing what's happening with Roe v. Wade in the US, and how they're comparing it to something akin to The Handmaid's Tale. It's turning into reality. It's turning. We used to think, ooh, this is going to be an Orwellian nightmare based on 1984. I think we're already living it. We have been living it for a while. And it's not going to take us too long. we've been living in Mantos, Pakistan for ages. It's not going to take us too long for someone else to say, okay, fine, you know what, this is what it's going to be like. And like, oh, this is fiction? I thought it was something that happened yesterday. It's
Yeah.
strange to think about it. And you said it does bring out the joy of writing fiction as well as the terror of it, because you never know what you're going to write that's going to come true. And wow, it's mind-boggling to think about.
It is. It's a very strange show. Let's talk about things not as difficult to think about. And I want to talk a little about your writing style, because again, we're writers. They put two writers together. We're going to talk about writing.
Oh yeah.
So good. Your writing style is very visual. It's very cinematic. Like that's the kind of, because again, I teach creative writing at the university, and there's always one story we encounter a semester where the writer has a style of writing where it almost feels like you are watching something happen in front of you. The very few writers have that kind of skill or kind of style of writing. I'm not saying it's better than another form of writing. I'm saying it's another kind of writing, which is a very visual.
Could be a curse too.
Could be a curse too. Could be a curse too, where you just have people seeing everything you're writing without actually reading your words. No, but I think in this case, it's definitely a blessing and not a curse.
Thank
so
you.
Could you speak a little about that? Or are you someone who's been inspired a lot by cinema, a lot by film, a lot by visual mediums? Or is that just something that comes naturally to you?
All my life. All my life. I mentioned this in the author's note at the end. My father used to be a television producer for Pakistan Television, Mohammed Samejo. He did that for 30 years. And his entire life was about cinema, about theater, about movies, about being a media show person. And your father brings home VHS cassettes every day. You're bound to watch them, and you're bound to sit with him and take in not just the movie itself, but the wonder of how it's made, the wonder of how simple Baby's Day Out is, the wonder of how emotional Mrs. Doubtfire is as a story, the wonder of how Independence Day is mind blowing. So watching all of that, watching all those movies, watching all those TV shows, and then trying to think about what went behind it, how they did it, how they managed to create that visual scenario on screen, it kind of stuck with me. I also did some media work before. I acted for a little bit on local TV channels, and I did some direction as well. And I assisted my dad before he passed. So, well, that was a completely different life ago, right? And but like I said, this is where my stories started creeping up in my head. When I started making stories, I started thinking of what if scenarios. I started thinking of, ooh, wouldn't it be nice if the story went this way? So cinema has been a huge inspiration, and I guess maybe my writing style sort of emulates that. At least it does with Legends of Karachi, and it probably does with the one that I'm writing now. I had another book that I wrote that I self-published. That's entirely based on conversations, but I'm pretty sure that's got a taste of it there. So that was my idea behind it. I wanted to write it a little bit differently. It wasn't going to be, very awe-inspiring or very thought-provoking or very, deeply soul-searching. It was just, the joy of telling stories. And honestly, I didn't even know I had a writing style as such. Now that people have read it, they've discovered it. I mean, when I started writing Legends of Karachi, that was my first book, by the way. I was like, what? I have no business being an author. I didn't know what to do. I just wrote what I came up with. And then over the years, I started perfecting it. I joined this group, the Pakistan artists, bloggers, writers, readers, and poets group on Facebook. And I started sharing there, and I started getting feedback. It started a chain where, I had one story, I fixed it, I wrote another one, and another one. Then I came back to the first story, I read it again. I'm like, you know what? Okay, let's just do something else with this. And it's seen several mutations to get to where it is today. And I guess it's all been because of that entire inspiration that I got ever since I was a kid, as well as all the growth that I've seen throughout my years. That level of maturity kind of helped me polish what I had to write. So there is that.
So I usually hate this question, but how long did it take you to write this book?
I started. I started in mid or early 2017, and I think I finished right around before the lockdown happened. So it must have taken maybe like 3 years. So yeah.
You've answered that question much better than I've ever answered it, because I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea when things start and when they end. It's just a blur. It's a massive blur.
No, yeah, because I kind of I have this thing. So I like organizing stuff. Like I like organizing the folders and everything, right? So every chapter that I wrote it with a different thing. And I remember when I wrote the first chapter, black and white, I was like year zero, and the date. I don't remember the date, but I remember the year. It was March, I guess. But yes, year zero, black and white. Here we are, and I got a snapshot of it somewhere. But yes, it varies. Some people don't really realize it. I mean, they take breaks in between. I was writing Legends of Karachi, and halfway through, I got an idea for another book, and I started writing that. I, I don't know. I was maybe like, could I do that? Could I, start another work in progress? But I guess that's how the creative mind works, right? You're like, you know what? I've got something in my head. I need to get this out there before I forget. Like when you're dreaming something, when you've got lucid dreaming, and you're like, ooh, this is amazing. I've got to write this down somewhere. And by the morning, you're like, no, I forgot. You forget about it all. So there.
If there's one thing I've learned in my years of teaching writing, is that everyone has a different way of doing things. There's absolutely, when it comes to writing, there's no right way, wrong way, easy way, difficult way. Really, everyone, once they get into it, once they start taking writing seriously and doing it on a consistent basis, they just discover what works for them. And if someone
Exactly.
is if someone is able to work on two projects at the same time, I know exactly, like you said, there's people who work on three projects and four projects, and there's some other people who've been working on the same book for 15 years and are still having the time of their life working on that particular book. So yeah, no, process is definitely something that changes from person to person, and slightly related to process. What comes first for you? There's lots of themes in this book, right? There's themes of love and loss and violence, and there's themes of abuse. And oh, wait, sorry, I think we've lost Ali. Might be a power cut, so we're going to give it a couple of minutes and wait for him to join. We're just waiting for Ali to rejoin. Um, Amazing how, while talking about Karachi, his power probably went. Fitting. I hope Ali is able to join. All right, we're just trying to get through to Ali. He might be having some connection issues, but we'll just give it a couple of minutes, and hopefully he'll be able to join. We're having such a good conversation. Okay, so in case Ali is not able to join, again, we've been talking about the legends of Karachi. It is, as we were discussing, a wonderful book about the people of Karachi and people with fascinating stories about Karachi. These aren't your run-of-the-mill standard stories. There's a great deal of grit in these
Hi.
stories. Hey, I was just talking about your stories.
Sorry,
but yeah,
man.
no problem. Was
Yeah.
it
So, Legends of Karachi featuring K Electric. Here we are.
perfect? I just mentioned, I was like, how fitting in a discussion about a book on Karachi that Karachi interferes yet again.
There
K
you go.
Electric interferes yet again. So this is perfect. This is all part of the plan, everyone. No need to worry. We planned all of this. We
Yes,
planned.
of course. It's part of the experience.
It's
Part of the
part of the
experience.
Karachi experience. It's
Yeah.
part of the Karachi
Yeah.
experience.
It's
But
gonna
we'll
be
just
K
get back
Electric.
to
It's good. Sure, go on.
No, I was saying we'll get back to our question, then our conversation as if nothing happened, because that's what we do in
Oh, yeah.
Karachi. We pretend nothing happened, and move on. So we were talking about what comes. I want to know what comes first for you. Is it what you want to say or the story? Because for a lot of writers, right, they really need to say something. They have something they want to say. They have I don't want to use the word message, but they have something they want to communicate via what they're writing. And that for them comes first. For other writers, they start telling a story, and what comes of it comes of it. What comes out of it comes out of it. It doesn't really matter to them what direction the story is going, what it's saying, or what it would mean to someone who is reading that story. What sort of a writer are you? Did you start off with, saying, okay, I'm going to talk about how violence has affected the lives, the relationships of people in this city for a story? Was it something like that, or was it you just telling a story and who knows what comes of it?
Well, centrally, I had that idea that, you know what, this has to deal with issues that people face, the things they go through. That had to be a central component of it, right? I had to pick a backdrop beforehand, like whether if it's power outages or muggings or domestic violence or problems with traffic or whatever. Those had to be there. And that was the easy part. That was actually the easy part because I had no problems finding out backdrops for the story. Um, Taking it to that journey, taking it through that journey from point A to Z, that was actually the more challenging aspect of it. I already knew that this is going to be a story about domestic violence and husbands being, violent towards their wives at home. So I knew what that story was going to be. The trick was to get it to say something different, say something other than what TV channels will tell you or what soap operas will tell you. That is what I wanted to do because I knew that, you know what, those stories have been told all the time. I wanted to do something different with it. I wanted to work out a way in which that story could have a different outcome. I had my outcomes beforehand as well. This is one of the other things that I kind of like doing before. I already know what my point A and my point Z is going to be. All right. I just need to get through the remaining letters. Right? I need to go through the journey, because a lot of times the destination doesn't really factor in. What factors in is the journey itself, right? And that is what I kind of did. I knew how the book would start. I knew how the book would end. I just had to factor in the entire journey. And that is what I had the most fun building up. So I wrote chapter 1 first. Somewhere down the line, I wrote the last chapter before I had even written like half of the book. So I knew where it was going to end up. Maybe it kind of, tinkered around with the ending a little bit. But that was what really meant to me, the journey itself, like how it affected people, how they came out of it, how they managed it. That to me really matters more in that sense. I hope I've answered that question correctly. But yes, that's exactly how I would like to look at it. I've got the backdrops in hand. I know what I'm going to talk about. I just need to get that journey in, and I need to make it resonate with people. So that was my challenge.
Small tangent, terrible question. Let's see if you can answer this. Your favorite story in this book?
Ooh, okay.
Like choosing your favorite child.
Oh, I'm going to say this again, the agony of choice. But if I had, maybe I'd pick a character whose arc, because this is all about arcs, right? I'd probably pick a couple of characters whose arcs I really enjoyed. I would like to say that I enjoyed Nadir's arc because he wanted this ideal society happening, and then he meets other characters who, share that vision. One very challenging arc for me to write was for Dr. Sabah Sheikh. And the reason was that this person was kind of an outsider. She came out from a different country. She'd lived all her life there, and she'd studied medicine. She comes back to Pakistan and she wants to be helpful, be a good person. And at the same time, she can't sort of let things slide. And the steps that she takes, the decisions that she makes, and the actions that she takes against the people who are, causing domestic violence, hurting other people, because she sees this happening whenever, women come to the emergency ward, and she's seeing them, she's treating them. So it becomes a very moral question for her, whether or not she should take the violent steps, without spoiling too much, the violent steps that she does. Because again, do no harm. That's their code. And she has to act out of that code only to ensure care, and only to ensure that she's giving care to the person. So that's kind of her sensibility towards it. And that was kind of a difficult arc for me to write. I wanted to sort of, emulate that properly. I didn't want it to be a completely Bollywoodish idea that, okay, fine, you know what, I'm going to smack this guy because someone smacked me first. No, I wanted to go into deeper about how she felt and how, that situation arose. So I guess that was one complicated arc for me. And then I think what I really liked writing were the interactions, the way it all gelled together. Probably the most challenging chapters for me to write were where everyone sort of is in the same house. Most of the lead characters were in the same house. There was this big party that happens in phase 8. So that was kind of fun to write. I guess it took me like a week and a half to get that properly right, completely right. It was just like one of those big Avengers moment. And everyone just gets together and, you're having it up there. So that was fun.
It is.
How about you? What was yours, if you don't mind me asking?
It is very different. Nadir, because you started off talking about Nadir. I am a very character-driven person. I am a person who latches on to characters and doesn't leave. I don't leave them alone. Because that, for me, really, at the end of the day is, and again, something I talk about in my classes all the time, good books make you feel something. And good books leave you feeling something. Good books introduce you to people for whom you want to feel something. And I think for me, Nadir was definitely one of those characters. He has that utopian idea of things as they should be. And I am not that person. So I found some solace in hey, somebody else is doing that job. I don't need to be the one. But no, for me, that was probably the one. And I love how you mentioned the Avengers moment, because that, when you write a narrative as well peopled as this, where there's so many characters, to put them in one place and make it so they don't escape immediately, to force them into conversation with each other, force them into one place, and to just kind of make them interact with each other. And if it's very difficult, and if it comes off, it's very heartening, and it feels very good. So I'm glad you had the Avengers moment for
Yeah.
yourself in that scene.
I hope it worked. I hope it worked as well as I hoped it would. I mean, it took me a while to get there, but I hope it worked well. I hope you enjoyed it too. And yes, what you said about finding solace with Nadir's characters. Okay, fine. I'm not the one who's going to have to do this. See, that's exactly the point. That's the point of Legends of Karachi, right? You're probably one of these people. I'm probably one of these people. I'm probably six of these people in one given time. And so is everyone else out there who even has not read the book, even if they just pick up one chapter randomly. You know what? I have always wanted to do that. I have always wanted to, get back at this person. I've always wanted to do this. And I guess that's probably the beauty of it, because see, these are Karachi stories. These are our stories. These are just as ours. These are just as theirs. And these are just as the city stories. And, they happen to all of us, probably have happened. I'm not gonna lie, it probably has happened, but that's what really struck me as the whole point of this book, that these stories are going to connect with someone out there. Even just one of them connects with someone out there, I'm going to be a happy person. And well, there you are.
So just a couple of short questions, since we're kind of nearing the end of our time. Do you have any, and again, writing influences? Again, a question that I can't really answer, but whenever people ask me this, but I hope you can. Are there kind of writers that you look up to? Are there books that you've read and reread that have kind of influenced, maybe not directly influenced? I'm not saying who do you emulate, but just whose work do you keep very close to you?
I couldn't answer that question either. I don't try to emulate anyone else's work. I mean, I probably am. I probably wouldn't even know it. And even if I am, I wouldn't be able to, what? I write just like that guy. I couldn't do that. They're way better storytellers out there. Maybe I'm going to be up there someday, but probably not as close. But I would like to say, sometimes you're like, what? This guy writes so well. I wish I could write like that, right? Or maybe just as close. I would like to write like that, but again, I probably wouldn't. It's just better to be myself. But yes, there are authors I read quite a lot. Douglas Adams has been a huge influence over my life. The whole Hitchhiker series, the Dirk Gently, short-lived Dirk Gently series. And I've had a lot of comic book influences over my life. I read Jeff Johns and Grant Morrison and Frank Miller quite a lot. A little bit more grittiness came from that side. And aside from that, I just keep discovering authors. George Orwell has been a major influence, particularly the whole dystopian genre. I guess it's probably affected me a lot, and it's kind of come up here as well in a couple of plot lines. So yes, I would say that I've been influenced by them a lot, and at the same time, the media, Hollywood, popular entertainment. There's always something in my head that's coming out of it, and that's sort of just pours out. You know what? I've got so many influences going in. Let's just make a mess out of it and see what if the mess that I'm making is kind of gonna make me a bestseller one day. Who knows? So there you go.
Do you have your own theory for the number 42 and the meaning of life?
Oh God.
Do you have a theory?
Oh man. I don't have a theory. I mean, I'm just gonna go with how it is. But I could really, really resonate with. There's a scene in which Marvin and Arthur and I forget the character of the girl who visit this planet where the oldest words in civilization are etched in stone, and it's a backbreaking journey. And Marvin the android is at its last legs, literally on his last legs. And he goes there, and the first ever words written in existence on that mountain are, "We apologize for the inconvenience." And I heard that, and I heard Marvin's reaction. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is what life is. And there you are. It just sums it up. I mean, more than 42, those particular words are going to be etched in my mind, because you know what? This is what the universe is like. And at the same time, as far as number 42 is concerned, I'm going to have to go with the person who tells the whole truth explanation, that you know that the ultimate question and the ultimate answer are mutually exclusive. You can't have them together. To have that, it would just destroy existence, and I don't want to do that. As much as I want to know what it is, I think I'll just stick with the ultimate answer for now and not go with the ultimate question.
Good plan. Good plan. So I think finally, again, we're in Pakistan. We're talking about a Pakistani book, and we're talking to a Pakistani writer. Writing in Pakistan has obviously had its ups and downs, completely disappeared for a while, but now is, as far as I see it, making a bit of a resurgence, particularly writing in English, with new publishers coming up, and just people like kind of beginning to publish more work written by Pakistani writers. How's your kind of experience been of, just the writing community, and also just because you also spend a lot of time on your Instagram, and very rightly so, promoting your work, and that's something that I think you've spoken of too. That you've spoken about too. That writers here need to promote their work, because it's not like there's publishing houses with millions and millions of dollars that are going to do the work for you. So how has it been? How's the kind of writing journey for you been in Pakistan as a Pakistani writer, in just getting your work out there?
Well, as far as getting published is concerned, let's just come back a little bit before that. I found tons of support in terms of feedback, in terms of knowledge, in terms of people helping out each other and figuring out exactly what to do, what not to do, what formatting guidelines are, how you're going to end up querying agents. I didn't have that knowledge beforehand. I got that knowledge and I ended up passing it on. It's kind of a very communal situation, what with social media now, what with Facebook groups now. People are getting as much help as they can. The group that I mentioned, I've been with them for 5 years, the Pakistan Artists, Writers, Readers, Bloggers, and Poets group. And it's both catering to Urdu and English authors, poets, writers, bloggers, nonfiction, fiction, everything. And there's a ton of support. One of the main things that I've noticed is that they don't. If they're gonna critique you, they're gonna critique you and like, okay, you know what, positives first, then let's go with the critique. And that is exactly how it should be. Customer Service 101 training taught me that. Go with the positives, then come down to the negatives. And that's one way to go for it. And then now that publishing has seen a resurgence with independent publishing houses, with much more simpler scenarios where you've got print on demand, you've got easier bulk printing options. It's actually not that labor intensive. It is cash intensive. I mean, you've got to have some bank. So that's one thing. But as far as getting help is concerned, help is already out there. Some of it is good. Some of it, I wouldn't like to comment. The real challenge that I thought really came up was with the marketing. And because let's face it, whether you're going to book groups, whether you're going to the forums which cater exclusively to book readers, a lot of people are not going to take a chance, largely because what, the writers in Pakistan do sometimes get a bad rap. People are like, oh, this book's got too many grammatical errors. Oh, he's going to talk about this again. Oh, he's going to talk about terrorism again, or how religion is influencing the country and all. I mean, sure, why not? People are going to use that because, let's face it, some things sell a lot more, which kind of hurts the writers who are writing their own niche. No one like to comment on that too much. But yes, it's all about taking a chance. I came up with this idea a year ago that, you know what, let's just go made in Pakistan for a whole year. I came up with this idea that, you know what, I'm going to buy every month I'm going to buy a Pakistani author's book, and I'm going to review it. I'd probably do a very good review. I'd probably do a pretty decent review for them, because I like to think that, you know what, hard work needs to be paid off one way or the other. It's not a major step that I'm going to do, but it's a step. So I figured, you know what, let's try that. Let's go with that. And I've been doing that successfully. It's my second year. I'm doing a Made in Pakistan stack again. And I try my best to, you know, market it as much as possible. I tried marketing my first book with memes. Would you believe it? If you go down my Instagram post, you're going to find tons of memes that just say "get damaged." It just works that way. So that is what came to me. You've got to be very active as an author. You've got to sort of like put yourself out there. You have to find opportunities. You have to find situations where, you know what, hey, please buy my book. And there's no shame in it. You know what, buy my book. A business is going to advertise, right? If I've got a good product, I hate thinking in capitalist terms, but if I've got something to sell, you know, I'm going to market the hell out of it. And that's what I'm doing with Legends of Karachi. The trick is how innovative I can be with it. So, you know, doing that is fun in itself. And, you know, a lot of people have fun too. Ooh, that's a good meme. I think I'm going to buy that book. And there it is. So with authors in Pakistan, I think the real challenge is changing perceptions in potential readers' minds and giving people a chance. Like, you know, I get it. A lot of people may just be like, you know what, I'd just rather buy the next international sensation rather than something that's published here, particularly in English. But you know what? Why not? Go ahead. Buy a local author's book. You know, let them reap the fruits of their labor, sort of. And who knows? You'll find a story that resonates with you a lot more than, say, something that happened in Europe or the US or the Middle East even. That's kind of my take on it.
That's the perfect mic drop moment to end this on. Buy a Pakistani author's book. You will find stories that you will not find in books written in other places. You'll find your own stories, and there's nothing like finding your own stories in books.
Yeah. And you also overtake that complaint that people have. You know what? My story, the story of my country, is so misrepresented in other countries' fiction books. Well, buy a book in your own country, right? You're not going to get misrepresented there. You're getting straight from the horse's mouth. You're getting it straight from a guy who lives in Karachi, lives near Jail Charangi, where the fire actually happened. And there you are. You're going to get it straight from the horse's mouth, and you're going to enjoy it. I guarantee you that much. It's a work in progress. This is what I like to think about the situation here. It's a work in progress, and things are looking up. Hope for the best.
All for the best. Thank you so much, Adi. And thank you so much for everyone who's been listening. We've been talking about Legends of Karachi. The book is right here and available on Liberty. Hold up your copy too. Hey, 2 copies. It's available on Liberty Books. Please go check out some Ali's Instagram page. There's some really nice videos on there too, about this book, based on things that are happening in this book and characters and whatnot. So as he said, he does a lot of work on his Instagram page, and it's a really fun page to be at. So go follow him there, buy the book, read the book, and just keep supporting Pakistani writing. Thank you so much, Ali. This was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure. I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thank you so much, everyone who's been listening.
Thank you. Goodbye.
All right. Bye.